I recall that night when my sister's voice pierced the silence, exclaiming, "Luke, where are you? Help me." As I was watching television, her voice was urgent, suggesting an urgency. I promptly stood up. He arose and inquired, "What is the matter?" Her voice resonated from the toilet, tinged with confusion. "I forgot my clothes. Could you please retrieve them from my room?" My sister was an exquisite, kind woman, although she was very forgetful. This was not the first occasion she requested an item from me. Nonetheless, this instance was distinct. I ascended to my room, searched for the garments she had left, and thereafter brought them down to the bathroom. Upon knocking on the door, she opened it, somewhat wider than normal, her hands swiftly extended to grasp the garments. Yet, in that fleeting instant, the bathroom light illuminated her pale skin, exposing every contour of her body that I had never anticipated witnessing. I was bewildered and promptly averted my gaze, but my heart continued to race, and my eyes could not erase that image from that day forth. Luke began to experience a transformation in my emotions. She remained my sister, the closest individual in the household, yet the peculiar haunting sensation from that moment persisted, propelling me into a vortex of inappropriate thoughts. I was uncertain how to confront her. My sister Nora, who is 24 years old, she is really gorgeous this year, a self-assured woman who consistently captivates the attention of those around her. She possesses a slender physique, a refined visage, and notably an alluring waist that renders her impossible to overlook. With a bold personality, she frequently opts for fitting attire, both at home and in public, which accentuates her beauty, and whether by design or coincidence, accelerates my heartbeat each time I have seen them. Since that night, the night I saw her in the bathroom through the half-open door, everything in my heart has not been the same. The pale yellow light reflecting on her white skin, the sparkling water sliding down the curves of her body, making it unforgettable for me. I know that moments should not have happened and should not have remained in my mind for so long, but that feeling, that obsession like a ghost, haunts and never leaves. At first, I tried to tell myself that everything would pass and that the image was just an unfortunate coincidence. But every night I lay in bed, what I saw that day kept appearing in my head, clearly in every detail. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, cold sweat pouring down my forehead, trying to chase away the wrong thoughts that were invading my mind. But the more I tried to extinguish them, the stronger those emotions flared like a conflagration that consumed my rationale. Each day, she continued to reside comfortably in our modest abode, entirely oblivious to the turmoil within me. She laughed and jested with me, as per usual, addressing me with her familiar melodious voice, which I once deemed utterly ordinary. However, now merely gazing into her sparkling eyes, or occasionally inhaling the delicate fragrance she wore, filled my heart with inexplicable emotions. I could not articulate the reason for my transformation. I merely recognized that I was no longer myself. Her form-fitting attire exacerbated my turmoil, particularly when she sat on the sofa, watching television, her long legs crossed, or when she gathered her hair, exposing her elongated neck and bare shoulders. Every minute detail ensnared me in a web of conflicting emotions, leaving me feeling embarrassed, ashamed, and beset by an undeniable yearning. Nevertheless, I endeavored to maintain a facade of composure, engaging in conversation and laughter with her as if nothing were amiss, and assisting her with trivial tasks. I engaged in light-hearted conversations with her around the house, occasionally teasing her
to elicit a smile. However, beneath these exchanges lay an internal turmoil whose resolution remained uncertain. I refrained from gazing into her eyes for too long, fearing she might discern my distress. One afternoon, after a taxing day, I opted to unwind. In my room, by watching an adult film, this was not my first experience, but my unstable mood and recent convoluted thoughts rendered it particularly enticing after viewing. I reclined on the bed, unable to dispel the lingering images and emotions, until a sudden knock on the door jolted me back to reality. Luke, come out here with me for a moment. Came the call, procure veggies for supper. Voice resonated with an urgent yet compassionate tone. I responded, yes, wait a moment. Then I quickly stood up and adjusted my clothes, forgetting that I wasn't wearing underwear. When I walked down to the living room, Nora's image immediately caught my eye. She was wearing a tight t-shirt, showing off her slim waist and short shorts, revealing her long white legs. Each of those perfect lines made my mind numb for a moment. The thoughts I had just tried to push back came rushing back like a raging wave. A strange feeling rose.
In my heart was a mixture of admiration and confusion that I couldn't understand. I tried to keep a calm face and push away the emotions that were surging in her, but then, for some reason, my body reacted against my will. I felt my little guy getting erect, and even more frightening, I completely forgot that I wasn't wearing underwear. It seemed like my whole body was betraying my mind, pushing me into a situation that was both embarrassing and uncontrollable. Nora suddenly burst out, laughing, her laughter resounding loudly in the quiet space. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something that was hard to explain. I was confused, not understanding what she was laughing about. What's wrong? Is there something funny? I asked, trying to hide my confusion. But she only laughed harder, to the point that she had to turn away, so as not to look directly at me. It's not good for you to go out like this, she said, covering her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. I still didn't understand what was going on, standing there like a statue in the middle of the living room while she continued to laugh. I asked what's wrong. Did I commit an error? Humorous, although she shook her head in an attempt to suppress her embarrassment. No, it's nothing. I will proceed alone. Her voice was hesitant, both earnest and concealing something. I remained there, perplexed, questioning why she initially invited me to accompany her and now instructed me to walk alone. I was engulfed in uncertainty, yet I was unsure of what further inquiries to make. I entered the room with a cacophony of ideas. As I walked by the mirror, my gaze was arrested. It was then that I comprehended the source of her amusement. I was not wearing any underwear, and my arousal had been evident for some time. My cheeks flushed with humiliation as I remained still, grappling with both embarrassment and uncertainty. Her laughing resonated in my mind. Nora acknowledged it. She unequivocally did otherwise. She would not have laughed so heartily. Yet why did she refrain from articulating it? Why did she, with hesitation, instruct me to leave, back into the room? A series of questions popped into my head, making my heart beat faster. Was she just laughing because of this funny situation? Or did she have something else in mind? I lay down on the bed, covering my face with my hands, trying to push away the awkward feeling, but the image of Nora, her laughter, and that vague confusion kept haunting me. I wondered if she thought of me the way I thought of her, or was it all just a coincidence that I was doing myself? A feeling of guilt filled my heart, but at the same time, a vague glimmer of hope crept in. making me unable to stop thinking about her. When Nora came home, I was still feeling embarrassed from what had just happened. Although I wasn't sure, I almost believed that she had seen something that made her laugh earlier. The more I thought about it, the more I thought about it, the more I felt my face burning, as if I had just been caught doing something wrong. However, I told myself to stay calm, to act as if nothing had happened. I decided to go down to the kitchen to prepare dinner with my sister, trying to find the usual natural atmosphere between us. As soon as I entered, I spoke up as usual. "Yuel, the market is crowded." Nora did not turn around, only said succinctly, "It's acceptable, albeit somewhat congested. Please enter," and assisted me. I nodded and approached her as she washed the vegetables. I sat down and began to break each vegetable branch. For her to prepare for boiling, the atmosphere was tranquil, with only the sound of water flowing from the sink faucet. However, I felt a lingering tension within in me, uncertain whether she had truly perceived the recent events or if I was merely complicating matters. I believed that by not mentioning it again, everything would resolve itself. Nevertheless, at that point, her voice resonated, causing me to tense up. "Have you completed your task?" Nevertheless, I was astonished. Her words struck me like a blow to my already precarious mental state. Despite my comprehension of her implic, I lacked the fortitude to confront the situation. My entire body became immobilized, uncertain of how to respond. My pulse raced, however I attempted to feign ignorance of her implication. "Oh, I have completed the destruction. Should be okay, correct?" She glanced at me, her eyes playful and erratic, and offered a little grin and nod. "If you have completed your task, please leave it as is. I am capable. Proceed." Her voice appeared entirely ordinary. However, I sensed an unusual quality in her words, partly jesting, partly playful, which had me very embarrassed. I refrained from further comment, only nodded, and rose up, indicating my intention to ascend the stairs. "You carry on. I am somewhat fatigued," I remarked. Noah offered a faint grin and remained silent. I then left the kitchen, silently attempting to walk with composure. I was internally distressed. Upon returning to my room, I collapsed onto the bed, overwhelmed by feelings of shame and embarrassment. Her question reverberated in my mind, leading me to ponder whether she truly comprehended my thoughts. I reclined on the bed, obscuring my face, with my hands engulfed in confusion and helplessness. I must regain control. This is my sister. No, I reiterated it as a reminder. The image of her in the kitchen, her smile and her teasing voice lingered in my mind that night. After the family had concluded dinner, I returned to my room to organize the clutter in the corner of my desk. The silence was profound, interrupted only by the sound of insects chirping outside the window while I was occupied with putting away my books. I heard a gentle knock on the door. "Who is it?" I inquired, my voice somewhat tremulous. "Greetings. I am Nora." Her voice resonated softly and familiarly. "Would you assist me?" I promptly responded. "No problem. What do you need?" As I spoke, I approached the door and opened it, revealing Nora. The first aspect that captivated my attention was her attire. She wore a light blue silk nightgown that was both delicate and flattering against her smooth, fair skin. The gown featured a subtly deep V-neck, exposing a hint of her collarbone and slender shoulders. My heart momentarily skipped a beat, yet I endeavored to maintain a composed expression. She smiled and entered the room, stating, "There's something wrong with my phone. I am uncertain why the application consistently crashes upon my entry." I attempted to restart it, but it was ineffective. Could you assist me? I acquiesced, taking the phone from her. Allow me to attempt a solution. It is likely only a software issue. There may be an application conflict or an operating system update. Nora stood there, as composed as usual, yet her presence in this little room, particularly in her pajamas, left me feeling perplexed. I glanced down at my phone. I began examining the settings, as I suspected her operating system was outdated and incompatible with the latest version of the program. I informed her that her phone required an operating system update and offered to download the new update, reinstall it, and resolve the issue. Oh, truly, I am relieved. I feared it was damaged. She said, her tone kind and at ease. As I crouched down, grappling with the update download, I sensed her attention and instinctively glanced at her. From the periphery of my vision, she was not focused on the phone or its contents. I was engaged in an activity when her gaze descended upon me. Suddenly, she offered an enigmatic smile that eluded my comprehension. I hesitated, striving to conceal my embarrassment, yet internally, my confusion intensified exponentially. I recognized that expression. I understood what she had just perceived, but I lacked the courage to confront or articulate it. I managed to reinstall the device, stammering in an attempt to alleviate the A-ward atmosphere. Oh, that was quick. Thank you, she responded, maintaining a subtle smile. She retrieved the phone from me, her eyes briefly assessing my reaction. It is inconsequential, only a minor error, I responded, attempting to maintain composure. However, beneath the surface, I recognized that her tranquility was merely a pretense. Her appearance and subtle actions this evening had inundated me with tumultuous emotions that were difficult to manage after passing the phone to Nora. And contemplating that the situation had concluded, I readied myself to escort her from the room. Yet before I could utter a word, she abruptly pivoted, leaned against the table's edge, and inquired, with a voice that was gentle yet significant, "Do I appear beautiful?" The unexpected question caused me to hesitate, unsure of how to respond. I smiled nervously, attempting to divert the conversation. It is beautiful, isn't it? However, what is the rationale are you inquiring about that unexpectedly? Nora smiled, her gaze fixed on me, as if assessing my reaction. She tilted her head and, in a teasing yet earnest tone, asked, "Did you just see me? Is that why you saluted?" Her words struck me like a thunderbolt. I felt the blood rush to my face. My heart raced, and my entire body was in turmoil, unsure of how to respond. I quickly shook my head and denied it without hesitation. "No, it is not, as you perceive." However, her gaze remained fixed on me, and her subtle smile intensified my embarrassment. She approached gradually, causing the confined space to feel increasingly constricting. I retreated in an attempt to maintain distance, but she abruptly advanced, grasping my shoulders with both hands, her face mere centimeters from mine. "Luke, what are you afraid of? We are both adults. I understand your thoughts. I have witnessed evil. I am aware." He averted his gaze, unable to confront her. "Nora, what are you discussing?" CE, although it was a joke, it lacked humor still. She persisted and continued to walk as she drew nearer. I could sense her warm breath on my neck, intensifying my anxiety more than ever. "Since Luke, why are you evading me? I know, do you wish for me to know us?" Voice was kind. Her words struck me with the force of a knife, and the atmosphere grew dense as my heart raced, threatening to burst from my chest. "Do not utter it," I implored, my voice quavering, yet resolute enough to halt the escalating peril. I retreated, establishing a physical divide. My gaze fixed intently upon her. Are you aware of what you are saying? This is erroneous, Nora. My sister's eyes momentarily reflected pain as she stepped closer, her voice subdued and somewhat imploring. Luke, do not deceive yourself. I perceive everything in your gaze. There is no need to conceal your emotions or to feign. I sensed my entire body becoming immobilized, yet my intellect remained enough resilient to withstand. I inhaled deeply, attempting to maintain composure despite my bewilderment and trepidation. No, you are mistaken. I do not share that perspective. I do not wish for us to be brothers or family. She paused, her expression revealing sorrow and humiliation as her eyes sought mine for a sign to proceed. However, I maintained my focus, resolute in denying her the opportunity to continue. Ultimately, she averted her eyes. She evaded confrontation as though she feared truth. Her voice diminished to a remorseful whisper. I am sorry, I do not understand why I am this way. I could consider returning to my room. She turned and walked out. Each heavy step seemed to drag the suffocating atmosphere that remained in the room when the door closed. I sat down on the bed, feeling like I had just escaped a big storm. My mind was in a mess with no way out. Noah's words still echoed in my head. Each sentence and each word seemed to touch the darkest corners of me. She said that I wanted her too, that I didn't need to pretend. Those words seemed to expose the feelings that I had tried to hide, feelings that even I myself didn't want to admit. She was right. I couldn't deny that after those seeming unintentional moments, I had had wrong thoughts about her. But no matter how strong my emotions were, my reason was still enough to remind me she was my sister, and we could never cross that line. I understood how dangerous this situation was. Every word and action of hers tonight had shaken the fragile boundary between us. If I didn't stay rational, if I let myself go, just once everything would collapse. Beyond repair, I sat in the empty room, feeling my heart being squeezed by torment. I didn't know whether to blame her or blame myself for letting things go this far that night. I couldn't sleep. I reclined on the bed, gazing at the dark ceiling, contemplating the events of a single day that had drastically altered my relationship with her. I recalled her eyes, her smile, and her ambiguous, concealed words. She was the individual I had always esteemed, the one I regarded as closest to me. However, the situation had become so convoluted that I hesitated to ponder what tomorrow might hold. I questioned whether I should remain here. Will there be a day when I can no longer exercise self-control? I understood that human emotions, no matter how strong, cannot overcome temptation if they are allowed to persist. Nora was too close, too familiar, but also too dangerous. If I did not create distance, I was afraid that one day all boundaries would be completely broken. After a long night of thinking, I decided to do something bold. I knew that there was only one way to protect myself and Nora from making an irreversible mistake. I had to leave. I needed to move out and create enough distance so that these emotions would no longer have a chance to develop. This was not only the way to solve the current problem, but also the only way to protect the beautiful family relationship between us. The next morning, while the family was having breakfast, I decided to tell them my intention. My voice was serious, but also confused. Mom and Dad, I think I'm going to move out. My father put down his teacup and looked at me with surprise. Why do you suddenly wish to go out? You are still young. Would it not be more prudent to remain at home? Is something amiss? My mother also regarded me with concern. Luke, is there an issue, or do you feel uneasy at home?
Please do not hesitate to express your feelings. I attempted to smile to reassure my parents. Despite my internal conflict, I feel a sense of maturity and a need for independence. I believe that venturing out will aid in my self management and better prepare me for the future. My father appeared contemplative, but ultimately acquiesced, stating that if I have made this decision, they will respect it. However, he emphasized that I must inform them immediately if I face any challenges, as home will always be a refuge for me. According to my mother, although increasingly concerned, I did not express any objections. It is imperative that you prioritize your well being. Should you require assistance with locating a residence, relocating belongings, or any other matters, please inform me. I acknowledge this with a nod relieved.
That my parents did not object too strongly. Although I knew they were worried, I remained steadfast in my decision that day. I began looking for a small apartment to move into. Despite the turmoil of emotions, I knew that this was the best thing for both Nora and me. I needed time and space to work through these feelings, to be myself again, and to protect the peace in the family from what I had experienced. I realized an important lesson: emotions are difficult to control, but not uncontrollable. Moments of weakness can cause us to be swept up in vague feelings, easily crossing the boundaries of morality and family relationships. However, being aware of right and wrong and remaining rational are the decisive factors in avoiding irreparable mistakes. I understand that accepting your emotions is not wrong, but knowing how to set them within the right limits. Sometimes creating distance is not to run away, but to protect more important values: love, respect, and self-esteem. The biggest lesson I learned is that courage is not always about facing, but sometimes knowing how to leave to keep the best things. The decision to leave a dangerous situation is not a sign of weakness, but a necessary action to protect yourself and those around you. You from being hurt through the story. I have a piece of advice for everyone in life. We cannot avoid unexpected situations that give rise to uncontrollable emotions. These emotions, whether fleeting or long-lasting, can lead to mistakes if we do not know how to handle them properly. Therefore, my advice is always stay rational and aware of boundaries in every relationship. When you feel yourself getting caught up in an emotional spiral that is beyond your control, cease and inquire. This emotion is worth trading for oneself. The invaluable aspects of my life occasionally necessitate mindfulness and self-reflection, which can illuminate the detrimental effects of impulsively acting on emotions, potentially undermining cherished values, such as familial bonds, honor, or self-esteem. If self-regulation proves challenging, consider distancing yourself or seeking assistance from family, friends, or a mental health professional. Such a avoidance is not a sign of weakness, but rather a means of safeguarding oneself from profound emotional distress. Be mindful of the choices you make today. Your future and that of people around you may be influenced by keeping boundaries and upholding your beliefs and ideals, which is the optimal approach to achieving a peaceful and fulfilling existence. My narrative concludes here. Thank you for engaging with this narrative. I look forward to our next video encounter.